Hello, everyone, and welcome to our inaugural AxeCon mini event. We're super excited to have you here for this special Developer Day. Today's theme is removing friction from accessible development. This theme is about making accessibility a natural part of how we build software. This is a big moment for us and for the accessibility community. We've brought together leading voices in design, AI, and development to show how accessibility can accelerate your workflow by reducing that friction that inevitably comes up when trying to be the change within our organizations. We've got an incredible lineup ahead. For our agenda today, we're going to start with Vitaly Friedman from Smashing Magazine, taking us through accessibility nightmares that keep showing up in 2025 and how to finally fix them. Then, Jenny Lay-Flurrie, Microsoft's Chief Accessibility Officer, will join Deque CEO Preety Kumar and CTO Dylan Barrell for a deep dive into how AI is helping enterprises ship clean, compliant, and most importantly, accessible code. Next up, we're going to have Jacqueline Tolisano and Herr from Salesforce. They will show us how AI agents can help developers catch and fix issues within the SFDX and ship that code before it even compiles. And then we're going to wrap up with Wilco Fiers on what's next for automation and accessibility testing.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. You are so kind. At this point, I would just give a round of applause to Jeremy for being just always such a wonderful and kind host as well. And thank you so much for the wonderful team to bringing me in. I come to you, dear friends, in peace. And I really mean it. I come to you in peace. Oh, hold on. At this point, I should be also sharing the screen as well. Come to you in peace, looking and speaking specifically about some of the accessibility nightmares that we actually keep having for years and years and years. It seems like sometimes I feel like I'm a broken record. It's not like because I'm breaking, but mostly because I really keep repeating myself over and over again about things that we see in testing, be it user research in general, be it accessibility testing, be it usability testing, and so on. And I want to share some things which actually are ironically predictable, yet still very often are very difficult for people to get around, right? And this all goes down, not goes down, it kind of all is around just a really strange world in which we ended up after this last 20, 25 years of doing that web thing. It always so surprising to me that in some way, like looking at all the magnificent innovation we've been doing in these 20 years, we got in the place where this is still a norm. I mean, not quite. We hopefully don't see that much anymore, the sort of captures. We do see this, however, reincarnated in a slightly different shape and form, namely, of course, like this, where we have a bunch of puzzles that we need to do for a living every single day. I wake up and I think, this is it. I'm just, solving weird, confusing, strange puzzles for a living. That's all I'm supposed to do. This is just so strange. Really? Is it what I'm supposed to do? And if you're like me, then maybe if you are really paying attention, you will see that some of these areas are just really difficult to decipher, but I want to get it right. And very often, when we keep going, we realize that there are some incredibly boring and incredibly confusing interfaces, things that are really difficult for people to decipher. There are also things that are almost like a puzzle in a puzzle. Like, what have you actually signed up with last time? Was it now Facebook? Hopefully not. Was it Apple? Was it something else, right? GitHub or anything else? Were you just using emails? So a lot of people have more accounts, and we probably have more accounts at this point than people in the world, because everybody has 2 or 3 accounts in any other service that they're using. Not to mention that sometimes things just get very confusing. Like maybe this here. This is a coffee lab, a wonderful, wonderful coffee shop in Eindhoven in Netherlands. And we have 4 different types of menus. I mean, choose your own adventure. Which one do you prefer? So you can have all of them open at the same time too, and all of them are working differently. So one of them is for navigation, one of them is just the label, one of them is for products, and one of them is for social menu. And if you like, you can open all of them. As you're always writing in the chat, the more, the better. I strongly disagree, but I do get your sentiment right here. So when we keep going with this, it's just really, really confusing, because when we look at the world of which we are, this is sort of where we ended up. People usually block things that they don't understand. Pop-ups and models are blocked. Push notifications are blocked. Chat window pop-ups are blocked. feedback or avoided, feedback widgets are dismissed, install app prompts are gone, people don't want to use them, importing contacts is also difficult, people just don't want to give access to personal information, and then we have geolocation permissions, and most recently, the newcomer in this magnificent space, AI widgets and chatbots, and people use it for a short time. And then you see that retention for AI widgets or chatbots goes very, sometimes very, very low or goes down over time because of accuracy issues. And then people say, well, we have two-factor authentication, but that's something that you can do later, right? Turn off your ad blocker, not happening. Access to camera, not happening. We also learned that we have auto-advancing carousels, but people are very, very good at skipping them. When it comes to onboarding, people are very good at skipping them as well. When you are asking your wonderful users to give you an email address for a newsletter that you're going to sign up for, to get a coupon code, right, to apply later for an e-commerce, right, what very often people do is they would go to magnificent services like tempemail.org to create a disposable email address that will be gone in 10 minutes. And I was once lucky to take a closer look at the email database of where all these emails are collected. That's pure creativity. There is so much magic happening in those email addresses that are all many fake and very rarely used. And then we have other things like when people asking, when forms are asking for specific personal information, when the copy paste is disabled, when we have crosswalks and fire hydrant. But when it comes to GDPR cookie pop-up, this is kind of an attitude, right? So what do we do with that? Well, I want to highlight some things that can actually maybe help us to get in a slightly better world and really go into specific examples of what it could actually be. One of them is related to filters. I mean, filters are pretty much all over the place. We will find them in many different places. And if you start looking into how people use filters and where they struggle, where the accessibility nightmares come along, you will find that this is much more common than we think. Now, first of all, it's actually quite important to notice that filters never come alone. Filters are always a part of an experience. In fact, they're part of the search experience. I find it actually quite surprising that when we start in kind of testing products with people, they often think about search as being a sort of a fact-finding or finding fact, right? This could be something like, I need to find like a washing machine of my choice, right? So when they use filters, when they use sorting, it's still to them a lot of times a part of a search experience, right? It's like I'm searching for a washing machine. And so filtering and sorting are not a separate activity. It's a part of that searching activity, right? And typically people do search first, then they filter, and then they sort. Now, if we look at an example of one of brands out there, right? We have Dell here. And on Dell, what we basically get is an overview of filters on the left. And if you look at what is happening here, we click around and then something happens. And we click more and something strange happens. But we have a refresh. This refresh is extremely disorienting. A lot of people have absolutely no clue what has now happened. It's not clearly communicated to the screen reader either in this case. So you're just like, okay, so I clicked through these options and now there is a refresh. And now most of them are gone except from the last one. But also, if you're just going through this page, the problem that we experience here is that we have auto scrolling. So you automatically scroll to the top of the page, right? And you always have to fight, if you're using a mouse, you have to fight against it or scroll past it or use keyboard to skip to the bottom. Because typically when it comes to filter selection, we go in and we actually select those filters from top to bottom, right? And this is just so confusing because if you look at some examples here, so we have a filter for screen size and we have a checkbox for 14-inch, 15-inch, and so on, right? And if you now click 14-inch, now you cannot select 15-inch anymore. Why? I mean, I'm interested in a laptop which has maybe 14-inch display or 15-inch display. A lot of times it's a problem that we have in logic, in the way of how a filter is implemented, right? This can be a severe issue, and a lot of teams never really even review that logic that we have, because what we see as a logic here is what you're saying as a user, I want a laptop, right, with 14-inch or 15-inch. But the way of how the logic is working internally, I want a laptop which is 14-inch and 15-inch, and that cannot work. And so this is why 15-inch is disabled, right? But it's not communicated at all. This is just so weird. So why can't you not have both of them selected, right? That seems to be a very, very obvious thing to do, but very often it's broken. And then also this whole scenario of auto-scrolling. Do we really need this? And it kind of keeps going. It's really all over the place. You look at some examples, like let's say Walgreens on the left, right? I mean, I don't try to make fun of the brands, but it's a very, very common problem that appears all the time. When you actually start operating, integrating, interacting with these filters, there is an assumption that people want to select one filter at a time and then apply it immediately. That's usually not the case at all. Usually, when you look at e-commerce, when you look in complex environments, people are selecting 4 to 6 to 7 to 8 filters at a time. So it's much more efficient for people to just have an apply button that they can interact with and they click on or activate, rather than have basically a checkbox that is executing every single time you select something. And the same spot, if you think about, let's say, the filters and how they're presented on Nordstrom, we have this overlay, which is basically taking up like what, 60% of the screen? And then the other 40% of the screen are just nothingness or blurriness of what is appearing once these filters are applied. But I'm not finished yet with those filters because, again, in practice, people tend to select 4 to 6 to 7 to 8 filters depending on the environment in which we are, and also the many options that they have available for them. So that's just extremely inefficient way of actually slowing people down massively. Something like an apply button, especially on mobile, is very much critical. And then my favorite is Crutchfield. Crutchfield. On Crutchfield, whole overlay that kind of covers the entire screen. But then every time you select one of them, let's have a dance first. We have a loading indicator, which shows you that you need to filter for products, but let me just click or tap or interact with it. Why is it that we absolutely need to wait for that filter to come back? That seems to be extremely inefficient. So how would we do it better? Well, if we think about, let's say, Stockholm University website, that's a slightly neater way of doing this, because what you have here is a decoupling. You're really breaking it down, breaking it apart. So you have the section on the left, which is all for filtering with accordions in there. And then you have the results, which are executed and also appear asynchronously, right? So you kind of have them decoupled from each other, which means if you want to click around with filters, go for it. If you want to explore results, go for it. It's calm, it's predictable, it's just doing what it's supposed to do, and not much more and not much less than that. This is just much more effective way, again, given that people might be applying multiple filters at a time. But it doesn't have to look like this. You might have these filters on the left. You might also have these filters above search results. It's actually quite important that we don't have the filters, and especially applied filters, on the left. I mean, this sounds like almost obvious, but I will show you an example why in a second. Here we have all these filters above the search results, and with each of them comes the button that says apply these filters, or show 30 results, or show 40 results, something like that. The same story, very calm, I would say very respectful, and in many ways just very, letting you do what you want to do, right, without being interrupted. Just for comparison again, when we look at this Dell example that I showed before, not only do we have to fight against the auto scroll every single time, right? You also get this point or this problem that as you start going through these filters from top to bottom, very often you have to reorient yourself and focus your mouse on that specific thing where you were. Why? Well, because the filters that you now have applied are actually appearing on the top of the page. So if you look all the way on the top, but we're fighting against it, I guess. Hold on just a moment, let me just find it. Maybe, so hard to find, right? You see this filter and compare at all the way on the top left? Like every time you add a new filter, it pushes all the filter area down. So it's very difficult for people to actually focus on that filter, the specific part that they are going through. Well, first of all, because they're being scrolled up, and second of all, because they also need to go all the way down every single time and refocus their pointer, right? All of these are just examples of very inefficient and just, maybe poorly designed experiences. But this is just filters. I mean, there is also a way to just simplify things. Like if you think about some of the really complicated nested filtering, maybe with tree structures that you might have in a very complex application. Now, in many ways, in many scenarios, it's so difficult to navigate. I mean, this is an example from the archaeology data service in the UK. I mean, it's not very surprising because it actually has something like, I think, 6 million records that can be browsed. That's, of course, a lot of records. And of course, if we look at navigating these records, you have this kind of tree-like structure in there with a lot of inconsistent metadata and all of that. When you have a tree structure, you might not want to represent it, also on mobile and on desktop as a tree structure. There is a simple way of how you present it as a relationship filtering. Something like this is much more efficient. So you have maybe a dialog menu where you actually bring people's attention to a specific filtering or navigation that they need to be exploring, right? And then what you have here on the left, you have a panel, and that panel represents the first level of navigation. If you click on one of them, let's say if you want to go deeper, you open the second, and then you open the third, and then you open the fourth, and it kind of keeps going. But if you actually are looking at opening multiple branches of a tree at the same time, what you need to do is on the second level, on the which says fund now, right? We probably want to have this grouping. Like this is branch 3, this is branch 4, this is branch 3 again, right? This is just a much simpler, much more predictable way to navigate. Plus, you probably want to have something like search at this point as well, which could be quite helpful, right? It's not magic. There's nothing magical here. It's just really basic usability and basic accessibility that actually can help people do what they need to do. Well, related to that, we have another beast that is actually really important, and this is coming up quite a bit, and that's infinite scroll. Right? Now, with infinite scroll, what's the deal with infinite scroll? Well, we look at something like this here, and you scroll, and you scroll, and you scroll, and you scroll, and it keeps scrolling, and it just keeps going, and you never hit the footer, all the issues that we are used to, right? Well, if you actually start thinking about improving it, well, not a problem. We just need to fix a couple of issues. 9 to be specific. First of all, this sort of list is often overwhelming and difficult to manage, right? Oh, I just realized that my clicker doesn't work. Overwhelming and difficult to manage because it's just a big list. There is often high abandonment rates when people actually go in and they dive very deep into the trenches of that stream and everything starts looking the same to them. So they abandon. It's very hard to spot what is new and what is old from the things that have now come in, right? The URL, the address in the address bar is often broken because you cannot just copy paste and return to that state where you are. Now you also can't bookmark a location to continue where you left off. You can't reach the footer, but who needs a footer anyway? You're breaking the scroll bar, but who needs a scroll bar anyway? And then you have accessibility issues related to that as people are navigating through this endless stream, right? And then you have performance issues as well. So if we wanted to improve it, which is again, this infinite scroll is a very common pattern that you will find in a lot of e-commerce sites and a lot of applications that require to show a lot of data. Right? If you wanted to improve it, how would you do that? Well, there are a few simple ways. One of them is to break that infinite scroll into something like a load more button. Right? So you scroll if you like and you explore all these items. And then eventually you get to the load more button once you hit a particular threshold of items that you have seen. Right? You activate that button and then you see more results. Now, this new section can have a different title. You can navigate to it in a bit more predictable way. This can be just much easier to navigate. Now, when we were working on this, I thought that maybe we could actually do more with this, like maybe this, which is basically an option to give people a way to continue browsing later. So there is an email address that they can leave, and then we are sending a link to them to continue where they left off later, plus they could win a gift card, $350 gift card. But you can still load more products and explore more. Now this creates this very clear breaking between what you have seen and what you have not seen yet. Also, marketing team loved it because, well, you're getting email addresses, so that's fantastic, right? But then you also get the notion of control here because you're getting a link, you click on that link, right? And then you're getting to the stream where you actually left off, right? And so you can also take it further. You could say, well, why even send an email to somebody? We could just include a link saying, show these items on a separate page. That's helpful. And you can also say, well, continue here later. The next time you come to this page, you can actually highlight that, hey, this is where you left off last time. And these are the new items that emerged maybe or were published or so after you left the page. So you see the new things, and then you can continue that, listing whatever it is that you have there, right? So that's a bit more predictable as well. But why stop there, right? If you want to fix a problem with the footer, how do we do that? Well, I highly encourage you to invent something that I call a website Friday night experience, which is every Friday night is a website night. You go to a random website in a particular domain, in a particular country. I even vibe coded a particular website and application for that. That's fantastic. And this is where I ended up. This is Damakan. Damakan is a food delivery service from Indonesia. And what you have here, right, as you keep scrolling through it, you have a sticky area at the bottom right, which you can navigate to with keyboard as well, by skipping right to it. So you can always skip the footer, right? And you can always open it up and explore it. And you can also close it and explore it, right? Explore the results. And so it kind of supports that navigation within that list. But in a way, it actually fixes the footer problem. But I know what you're thinking. That's not good enough. We need to go further than that. Yes, we could. And one way of how we could do this is pepper.pl. Now, this is probably the most accessible infinite scroll I've ever seen in my life, but also it's remarkably complicated to get it right. The way why I'm saying this is that as you keep scrolling, the URL bar on the top is changing, right? You also can jump to the top if you like. You also can open the footer if you like. But at the same time, if you prefer, you can actually just navigate through pages by clicking on page 2, because the URL is changing. And so what is happening, the parts of a page, like page 3, page 4, page 5, they're just attached to the page that you're scrolling through. So it's not really infinite scroll because you do have a sense of a page as well. And if you need to, you can also jump to any particular portion, particular part of that stream as well, and have a dedicated link for that. Right? And I know what you're thinking, this is great, but this is not good enough, right? And you're right. We need to go further, because one thing that we could do to help people navigate that stream faster is maybe something like this, where we have labels next to the scroll bar positioned depending on what you're sorting by. So if you're sorting by price from low to high, what you could actually position or highlight or next to the scroll bar, right, is, whenever you have the portion of the stream where a particular price point starts. So it doesn't have to be pricing. Could be also something like the date published or anything similar, right? It could be a lot of other things that actually can be sortable, right? So if it's something like relevance, you can't sort by relevance. I mean, you cannot just map something into a scroll bar. That doesn't work, right? But what you could do is try to figure out what are some of the common ways that people are sorting by and surface them this way. Now, I'm a very happy owner of the screenshot from 2014 on IKEA, which I probably should turn it into NFT and become a billionaire in no time, right? Everybody will want to have that, I'm sure. This is a pagination which has these numbers underneath them. Numbers representing $8, $29, $48, and so on. Do you understand what it means? Well, if you start looking into this, it's kind of a helper to paginate better. What we mean by that is, if you want to, let's say, jump in the range between 48 and 83, as Chris is writing, cost indeed, if you want to jump in a specific range, you can do that now. Because typically, if you just have a pagination going from 1 to, 50, when people jump somewhere to, let's say, page 17 or so, this is so random. This is such a guess. It's just extremely inefficient as well. People need to move between a lot of pages to get where they want to be, right? And so this is what we call a steps pagination, where you basically look at what people are sorting a result, well, at least by, could be infinite scroll or not, right? And then you allow them to jump to an area that would be more relevant to them. Now you could probably design it a bit better, maybe with some vertical lines and so on and so forth. But this is a way of how you can actually make it more kind of expose to people what they see on those pages. Now Hector is writing, data integration here might be very complicated. And that's absolutely right, right? But if you know for every page, even if you don't use infinite scroll, what is the pricing point and where and how it's distributed, it doesn't have to be the exact number, but maybe more of a range of what you're looking at, right? So, and as Heather is writing here, what would it look like if we actually were sorting by popularity? That's very difficult, right? Unless it's like number of likes or anything of that kind. So that would be then very, very, very hard. And Thomas is wondering, isn't this also something that may or may not be solved with better filtering options? For sure, right? It just sometimes people need to explore a lot of data, right? And so filter brings them to a comfortable range. This is how we call it. Now, that comfortable range for expert users can be easily hundreds of items. For, B2C environment, maybe 30, 40 items, right? So these could be, quite challenging. And also, as Leon is writing, obviously it's very important that when we actually look at each individual link, that we communicate with area described by what we are linking to, right? So what is it? That is the pricing where you're going to. This is just better for everyone because it kind of communicates what you should be expecting on those pages, right? Now, one more thing on top of that. I think it's very underestimated, but really extremely challenging. And that's the notion of drag and drop. Now, when we think about drag and drop, we don't think about, you know, we usually think about cards. This is kind of a way of how we think about this. We don't think about complex data tables or grids or resizing columns or moving columns around. But I would say that most of the time, the complexity comes not from moving cards, but from having environments where you need to do something with tables, right? And so what we get over here, thank you so much, Laura. I'll just get into it. What you get over here is a lot of movements that also require precision that must be available by UI controls, right? So I see a lot of people being very, very confused, especially in terms of European Accessibility Act, because a lot of data grids, a lot of data tables, they just don't natively support any kind of accessibility out of the box often, right? There are some solutions for that too. But things like resizing, things like shuffling around, moving around, dragging around, all of this requires quite a lot of work and effort. And so what you typically find, and this is coming from a wonderful design system for Goldman Sachs, you need to be able to select a column or a row via UI controls, lift it up, move it using keyboard left, up, right, down, right, and then let it be. Typically representing itself like this. You tap through the options, you click on space, right? You grab it with the spacebar, then you move it around with the arrow keys, right? And then you let it be with space again. And this also goes for mobile too, by the way, right? Because we need to have an option to move up and move down because you cannot rely on dragging alone. And this also goes in areas where sometimes you have a navigation control that allows you to do that, right? And very often what you find is that, of course, this is coming from a Salesforce, by the way, which has a fantastic resource on that. You need to be able to communicate messages about where the object now is, right? And typically this would mean that you probably have a UI control which allows you to lift, move, grab, and you need to communicate it as well, right? So this is just a few examples that I wanted to highlight here. I think we could go like this for a while, but to wrap up, and maybe to also answer a few of your questions as well, it's been so surprising to me. Like these are just three examples of where things go really badly, right? And which are often underestimated. But it's so funny that when you look around, it's always the same story. Like what people like is when things are fast and accessible, when you have large and legible text, when you have checkboxes that look like checkboxes and radio buttons that, guess what, look like radio buttons, when you have input boxes that look like input boxes, and also when you have focus and active states, simple password requirements. It's all been the same for the last 20 years. There's absolutely no magic behind it, right? And I think that if we just get the accessibility right, we're doing already so much right. This is unbelievable. It's just sometimes we are struggling with retaining accessibility rather than building it in. So I'm sure that with your incredible effort, we can do better. Now with this, I have cats and a few more cats, and I think that Jeremy is looking at me saying, I have questions. So thank you so much for listening to this, everyone. There's also a wonderful session today from Salesforce people too, which I highly recommend you to attend.
All right. Thank you so much, Vitaly, for that presentation. And thank you. Just a note, so that we can start on time, we're going to ask you to answer the questions via text in Zoom.
Sure.
Also, if you do become the next NFT billionaire, I fully support you. I just want you to remember that, if you need my Venmo, I could send that over.
I don't think I'm going to be in that space, actually.
Okay. Well, that's okay. So our next talk is with Preety Kumar, Dylan Barrell, and also the Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft, Jenny Lay-Flurrie. And without further ado, let them begin.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much, everyone, as well.
thank you, Jeremy. So let me just give a brief introduction to the folks that Jeremy introduced, a double introduction. Jenny Lay Flurrie is the Chief Accessibility Officer and author uh, at Microsoft. I've known Jenny for, I think, a decade or decade and a half. Who's counting, right, Jenny? We've known each other a long time. And it's a privilege to call Jenny a friend. I think her true impact on the field of digital equality, accessibility is going to only be known in the rear view. It is profound today. I think it's going to be even more profound as we look back at these days. It's an honor to have you here, Jenny. I am Preety Kumar. I am the founder and CEO of Deque Systems. I've been doing digital accessibility for 25 years. My passion is to make um, tools to make accessibility easy without any prior knowledge of accessibility for developer teams. That has been my goal for 25 years, and it remains that. That's been my vision. My partner in crime, the Chief Technology Officer at Deque, Dylan Barrell, is the one who translates that into reality. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Jenny.
Good morning, good afternoon. Preety, it's always a joy to join you. I am the warm-up act for Dylan and Preety. I'm coming to you from Seattle, and I'm really excited to share just a few thoughts again to get the ball rolling here. I don't like following the previous. That is a high bar. So let me just lower that as quickly as we possibly can as I try and attempt to share my deck on Zoom, which I will profess as a Microsoft professional is really not my first technology. There we go. So I want to give just a couple of pragmatic approaches and really thoughts as we go into this to give a sense of where we are and where we're going. There we go. And I know that people will tell me if they can't see my screen properly. So Jenny Lay-Flurrie, it's not a fancy name. I hail from Birmingham or thereabouts in the middle of England. I'm sitting here in Seattle. I have worked at Microsoft now for, my gosh, about 21 years almost, and I've had the incredible privilege of being the Chief Accessibility Officer, the second Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft for the last 10. Microsoft itself, a long history. There's a rolling slide here that gives some of those little moments over the last 30 years of accessibility. My favorite was reading back in the archives and realizing that the most important component of our journey has been the work that we have done with the community. We are a nerdy company. We are 238,000 people around the world at this point. We have grown a little bit in the 21 years that I've been here. But that is the red thread. Where we have gotten it right and wrong is when we haven't been as invested as we needed to be with the community itself. We're also grounded by a lot of research. Some of you may have as long or be as old as I am, and remember a research paper that we did way back in 2003 with a company called Forrester that looked at the density and the propensity of accessible technology and how it was being leveraged by people. And the headline keeps us grounded today. 57% of people will benefit from assistive technology. One of the things that Preety and I will be doing actually next month is heading to Ignite, which is one of those big Microsoft conferences, and we'll be talking more about this. And I'll be announcing a new research paper that we have done to update this research. But I don't want to keep the headline till then. The headline is that the use of technology and the potential of it has actually not realized the potential that there is. 57% could benefit, but only 14% were using it. That number has increased. And that is really the job that we have as we think about accessibility in the tech industry in this moment and in this era. My job, for any curious, every chief accessibility or accessibility leader, bluntly, from my perspective, you are all accessibility leaders, and no matter where or what you're doing. Our job is twofold. One is to make sure that we are building a culture of accessibility, a systematic, systems-based culture of accessibility within your company and ecosystem. And the second component of that is to make sure that you are also helping your customers to be accessible with the products that you produce. What does that mean for me? That means that I have approximately 6,000 products, websites, and tools. That inventory is ebbing and flowing and increasing rapidly with the evolution of this tiny little thing called AI. And how we deliver that is that we work across the 19 divisions systematically to make sure that we are delivering on not just compliant, that being the floor, not the ceiling, but we are delivering on innovative, paradigm changing, usable, delightful. All of those words come into it as we look at the future of accessibility. We ingest all of the regulatory and policies that exist around the world. There are many, the EAA. I was in Brussels for the European Accessibility Act with the Disability Forum just 2 weeks ago. It is increasing. Less so in some countries, more so in others. And then how do we really make sure that we deliver on that is about trust. So let me give you the quick foundations. I'm going to whiz through these at the speed of light because this room knows these, but if I don't say them out loud, it's a problem. We have to say them out loud, I think multiple times. We have to live and breathe the principles of inclusive design. If we just stick with that floor of conformance and compliance, we're not going to deliver on the potential and the community needs that there are for assistive technology. We recognize exclusion, we solve for one, we extend to many, and we learn from the diversity. We have mandatory training for every single employee on accessibility. Very proud of that, by the way. Everyone loves mandatory training. That is sarcasm if it's not coming through, but it is very, very important, as is partnering with other organizations who deliver and drive accessible training and skilling, particularly in AI. This one is by an organization called Founders. It's free, it's available to you all. And it came out of the UK, which makes it incredibly high quality. And it's also about making sure that we deliver, as my slide doesn't go forward, which is just horribly rude, by the way. This is where I ask and plead for my friends in, there we go, in PowerPoint. We also have to make sure that all of our services are accessible. For those that don't know, we do have a disability answer desk. That is a dedicated technical support for people, for customers, employees with disabilities. It takes about 10,000 calls a month. And that one is not just important to us to provide and make sure that people are online quickly, but it's actually also important to us because we get gold dust feedback from customers. All of this has helped us to deliver profound implications into our hardware solutions, even our packaging, which is now systematic across everything that you buy, being accessible, this being the adaptive controller, the one-handed joystick, the keyboards, the mice that we produce, and of course the software, which goes across everything, and we track the usage of those. Read aloud, 10 million users per month as one of many. But clearly we're in the era of AI, and we're also in the era of what I'm framing as a tidal wave. If we don't put our arms around AI in the right way, we will be propagating some of the harms that have been inherent in our community over the last few decades. All of us know the percentage of accessible websites that exist in the world. We've all seen the reports. They vary from 2 to 4%. Our goal with AI has to be higher than that. This era of technology has to tackle it in a different way. It's not new. Many of AI comes from the 1950s, but it's evolving incredibly quickly. And there are harms that we have to mitigate, whether that is authentic imagery in videos, you can create your own image, but you need to be able to create your own image if you're a person with Down syndrome or autism or low vision or dwarfism. We need to make sure that we're protecting privacy and security. And we also need to make sure we're protecting that not just of imagery, but of voices and speech. All of these have to be harnessed if we're to realize the potential of AI, which is insane. This is my daily view, which is in a different product, Microsoft Teams. When I joined the company, it was Link Communicator, if anyone remembers back that far. As a deaf person, I do leverage captioning. I do leveraging signing. All of those were manually provided back then. Now, thanks to the developers in Microsoft Teams, I have 4 features that I can use every single day: captioning, transcript, sign detection, which is incredibly important to me, and meeting notes. All of those give me fierce capability to be independent. And I can give you examples of that for any aspect. And please do check out some of my previous materials online. You'll see some more of these. But we need to get into this era in a more serious way. One of the things that's happening within Microsoft is the profound explosion of neurodiversity. Neurodiversity, not new, 2015 umbrella term for many aspects of disability. Many coming to it because of their kids, because of better diagnosis, and many other reasons. How do we better support customers? How do we make sure that folks new to the community get the constructs that they need? There are very quick abilities for us to do that, leveraging AI and agentic AI. This is a pure, quick example of that. We've ingested every single part of our neurodiversity best practice playbooks, our wisdom that we've garnered over the last 10 years of running a neurodiversity hiring program, and popped those into an agent, trained it well. And then what we can give is a chat environment that is accessible, that gives people the quick ability to get the information they need. Very easy, non-tech example, but clearly all of you know the wizardry that goes behind it. One of the things we've really learned is the training. But the principle is actually very straightforward. We need to shift left. Shifting left is how we avoid the tidal wave. Across tech, we are all keenly aware that the majority is happening in testing and maintenance. I have around 150,000 bugs that get created here at Microsoft. Most of those fall into the top 10 drivers. We are identifying those with automated accessibility insights.io, which leverages Axe-Core, and into maintenance, where we're continually driving user-based testing, thanks to our partners at Fable and others, to make sure that we've got not just compliance, but usable products. Shifting that into the left, so logical. We're not the only environment, security by design, privacy by design. It's incredibly important and where we're focused right now. So I'll just leave you with 2 examples to tee up Dylan and Preety. One is Figma. Now, this actually started with a hackathon team. We love experimenting and we love hacking. I enjoy hacking. I think it's one of the best things we can do, which is sitting around a table with some dodgy beanbags, some whiteboards, some poster boards, and a lot of insights, and just thinking about what could or should be new. What came out was the need to create an accessibility assistant within Figma. Simple concept, but incredibly important to shift this to the left. Publicly announced, publicly available. It's an add-on download. I encourage you to check it out. What it's doing is making sure that the annotations are embedded from the get-go. which is essential as we then think about what we're doing going forward, and we think about the potential of GitHub. Now, GitHub had their first open source accessibility summit just a couple of weeks ago, and all credit to Ed Summers and the amazing team behind GitHub Accessibility. This is a new accessibility scanner that is built on top of GitHub Actions and GitHub Copilot. It installs in your repository as a GitHub action workflow. It can scan on demand, on schedule, or when certain events are flagged. It's using, of course, the Deque Axe core to scan and find accessibility problems in web, and then files the GitHub issues to track them. It's assigning them then to GitHub Copilot to fix, and you can ground that in your organization custom instructions files as you set them. And then when it's done, it summarizes what's changed, how it found the problem, to how it validated the fixes before a human can go in and approve the mod request. It's a fairly basic but essential and important future that we need to create. And what I'm very excited about is how we can continue to partner on areas like this to make sure that we are shifting left so that we can field the future volume that is already hitting us in a tidal wave as the development and the workflows are decreasing in time. Most of our work now happening in weeks, not months or years. So I'm excited now to pass back. Again, I am entirely the warm-up act, and to pass to Preety and to Dylan to show how more and how further they are taking it, which is far more than I am right now.
I think Jenny talked about the importance of inclusive design, and we saw many examples from Vitaly of websites that can be challenging for anybody, for everybody. But I think I want to emphasize inclusive design. Why? Why should we all, as product teams, care? We should care because 1 in 4 people, adults, have a disability. And this does not even include the people who are just identifying themselves to have a disability or have never been tested. It does not include the elderly who are going to also have the same needs. I probably fit in both those categories. I have I'm aging. I have glasses. I can't see without them. I probably have undisclosed disabilities that I've never been tested for. My mother will tell you I was a difficult child because of all the disabilities that were never identified. So making your applications accessible is critical because it increases and opens up your products, which is what you live for, to make sure that they're used by as many people as possible. It makes it available to a wide population. The 1 in 4, the many unidentified. And here's the rub. Users with disabilities are very loyal consumers. The reason they're loyal is because when you get to know a website, an application, you don't want to relearn. It's more challenging because so many websites are inaccessible. They'll stick to it and they'll promote it. It's wonderful. And through that, you can build a very strong brand. So I agree with you 100%. Jenny, compliance, yes, we must have that check mark, and compliance is very important. But really, you have a big opportunity if you make your products accessible. Next slide. So I want to show you, some of you may not be familiar with the experience of somebody with a disability. When a website goes wrong, like a few that Vitaly showed, what does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it sound like? I want to play a quick video of my colleague, Patrick Sturtevant, who is blind. He is a senior principal accessibility strategist at Deque, somebody who knows accessibility programs very well. Patrick also loves to travel. He's always got his cowboy boots on. So let's see what his experience is like.
And Preety, you're going to have to narrate the video because the sound is not working.
Okay, I will try and narrate the video. So he needs to get to Mars and he needs to do it fast. He is on a Mars commuter website. And as he starts to try and book the trip, you're going to see he's struggling. He is going through radio buttons after radio buttons, and nothing seems to be working. He can't hear anything. He tries to select a round trip. The button is not labeled and not announced. He tries to go into the next field and there's no label at all. So he doesn't know that it's saying he's going from and to someplace. So he doesn't know what to enter. He tabs yet again, and he goes to the departure date, which is not labeled. Here's the thing. He encounters inconsistent labeling, missed labels, and even though he is a highly competent guy, having those inconsistent labels of having one departure date not labeled and the return date labeled, but hearing duplication of that, he ends up being completely confused and unable to book a ticket to Mars. Why should that be? Why should somebody with a disability struggle when somebody without a disability doesn't struggle? If you think about your day, every day, how many things do you do on the web and on apps? I counted today. Or yesterday, actually. I looked up a request for fixing something in my apartment online. I went and bought a charger on Amazon. I went into Bing and I did a bunch of searches. I looked into LinkedIn to see somebody's profile. And this is just a spattering of things, right? It's like I do much more. So because of that, we need clean, compliant, quality code that everybody can experience equally. All of us are fulfilling all of Maslow's hierarchy of needs on the web, and nobody should be excluded. Next slide. Jenny talked about shifting left. It is the most critical thing that we can do to have us development teams make sure we are building in what makes a website and application accessible. It's much cheaper to do it. And I know all of us really care, so we want to do it. They say 30% more expensive. I think it's actually much more because it's not just the testing, but it's the back and forth, which can be very irritating. Firstly, you have to deal with reproducing the bugs that your testers find. And of course, if your users find it, it's all the more worse, right? So we don't want that. Next slide. Now, this one I've thought a lot about. Why do we build products? To me, a good user experience is an essential part of product quality. You do not want a user experience like the one Patrick just had on the Mars commuter site. It's a constant. Shift left is a constant. Accessibility being key to product quality is a constant. And good user experience is an essential part of product quality. I don't think we Any of us would disagree with that. Next slide. And although we say shift left, product quality, brand loyalty, user experience, all those very reasons that you should actually develop accessible content and code for, let's not forget, compliance is becoming even more critical now with the European Accessibility Act. You do not want to be in a position like GDPR, where you did not pay attention to compliance. Fines in the case of the European Accessibility Act, are real and substantial. And you do not want to be caught on a flat foot reacting to this. So while we've given you many reasons to build accessibly, I guess compliance is something that you cannot ignore any longer. If you are selling to European consumers, EAA is going to apply to you, and you will have to make sure your code and applications are accessible to people with disabilities. Next slide. So despite everything that we've said, despite all the reasons, 95% of the web is still inaccessible. I guess we should be celebrating because last year, 96% of the web was inaccessible. We've made 1% progress. This is from WebAIM Million report. It's actually very sad, isn't it, that we should be celebrating 1% progress when it is so critical for the web to be accessible. If you think about the societal impact this has, you will see why this is so important. You cannot really shut out people. It's a fundamental human right. So next slide. So yeah, we've made progress, but here's what keeps me up at night. What keeps me up at night is that with AI, we are getting more and more prolific. We are going to create more and more code. Without a doubt, all of us are becoming more productive. But with AI, I think all of us collectively are understanding that we must take personal responsibility for the code that we produce. Otherwise, the problem is going to get bigger. We're going to get to 98% inaccessible instead of that 1% that we gained. And I don't want that to happen. So, Dylan, please help us understand how we can do better. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Preety. So yeah, I think both Preety and Jenny have both cautioned about the danger of where AI is going and could take us. And also Jenny pointed at some of the things that AI can do to help us. And I think that both these things are true. AI coding and agents are washing aside all practices, and this is so much truer today than it was when we first made a prediction about that about a year ago. In the most recent DORA report, I was quite surprised to find that 90% of developers now report using AI for work, at work. And this is a significant increase from more recent times. And in fact, what I've seen myself, even at Deque, is that some of the people who were skeptical when some of this technology first came out are now beginning to use it and are beginning to see how it can actually help them. So even the skeptical users are starting to get on board with the ways that this can be used. Everybody's learning the strengths and the weaknesses of the technology, and that allows us to then use it in the areas that it's good and adapt our way of use to be able to leverage it for its strengths and mitigate its weaknesses. So not only are a very large number of people using it, but they're using it quite a lot. The median is 2 hours, with a large number of people, large percentage of people actually using it far more than that. Some people are using it for 8 hours a day to do work. Some people, obviously working for Elon Musk, are using it for 12 hours a day. But this is increasing, and it's increasing at quite a rate. A year ago, when you looked at how even the developers who were using AI quite a lot, what they said they were using it for, a lot of them would say things like, well, this is really good at writing tests, so I use it for testing. It's good for summarizing documents, so I use it to help me summarize documents, create test cases. I may review some literature with it, things like that. Some of them were using it for note-taking. Some of them were using it to help themselves collect information and then give themselves answers from their own information over time. But now, as you look at what the most recent DORA report is saying, is the most frequent use case, 71% of people are now using it to write new code. And writing tests has dropped quite far down on the list. That's probably because people don't always test things. Writing documentation and those other use cases are still there, and the number of use cases keeps increasing. But what this means is exactly what Preety was talking about. If all of these people are writing code with AI, and the AI was trained on a lot of the stuff that's out there on the internet, and that is not accessible, the danger here is that more and more code is going to be inaccessible that gets generated. So how do these developers see the quality of the code and how it impacts their productivity? So it's quite dramatic that the vast majority, 85% or more, either say it's slightly increased, moderately increased, or extremely increased their own perceived productivity. And very few of them, in fact, around about 5% of them say that it decreased their impact, their productivity. So this means as well that the individual developers are being more productive with this. That means that by net, for the same number of people, we're generating more code. So what I call the ratio of code to developers is going up. If you look at how the quality of that code is perceived, or the impact of the AI generation on the developer's own code quality, that is also improving consistently. And so the vast majority of people think that it does actually have a positive impact on their code quality, and relatively few that say that it makes it worse. These are quite different from the way that things were perceived a year ago. But there's very little trust of the actual code that gets generated. So if you look at this, the majority of people say they have somewhat to little or no trust at all. I think this is healthy, and I hope this doesn't change too much, because at the end of the day, we never want to deploy code or to trust code that whether it was written by a human or whether it was written by AI. And I don't think there's any serious company out there that would deploy code to production, whether it's written by a human or written by AI, that hasn't been tested for functionality, of course, but also for things like accessibility, security, and performance. So I think having a healthy amount of distrust for the code that you're generating, whether by hand or by AI, is a healthy thing. But what is happening is that because a lot of accessibility testing today is still manual, in fact, Xcore is the primary way that for web development people do automated testing. The gap between the amount of code that we're generating and the amount of automated testing we can do of that code is increasing. And in this age of development at the speed of AI, anything that's done manually is going to be perceived as a drag on productivity. And so it's going to be increasingly unlikely that we can fill this gap by adding more and more manual resources to the problem. So we have a concern here. And as Jenny pointed out, in showing you what some of the positive things that can be done by leveraging AI to do things like help leverage knowledge that already exists on how to hire people with cognitive disabilities. I believe, and we believe at Deque very strongly, that what we need to do here and what we can do here is fight the AI fire with AI itself. So what we all need to do is to look for ways that we can leverage AI to get ahead of this problem. The good news is that a year ago, all these systems were pretty closed. If in October last year you had said, like, I want to do some accessibility testing, but I want that integrated into my AI workflow, you would have been hard pressed to figure out how to do that. In fact, we were thinking about that back then and saying, how can we plug in? And when Anthropic announced the Model Context Protocol in November, I said to my team, this is it. This is the way we are going to integrate into this. And so in February at AXCON, we actually talked about that and we announced our intent to support that. Pretty soon after that, March, April timeframe, OpenAI announced for support for that. Microsoft and Google announced support for that. And so today, where we sit, is we have thousands, literally thousands of products and companies that are either support Model Context Protocol or they have announced support for the Model Context Protocol. In addition, so Model Context Protocol already talks about how you can integrate things into the client, where the AI agent is the client in that sort of scenario. There's also the need, as we get more and more agentic workflow and development, for having agents talk to each other in open ways. And so Google announced the agent-to-agent protocol in April of this year, and Microsoft shortly after that announced support for that. And now there are 150 organizations that support that, and it's been transferred over to the Linux Foundation as an open source project. And there are a lot of other ways that you can integrate. Some of them, big initiatives like the Microsoft Agent Framework that was announced this month. Some of them sort of things that are specific to a particular technology, like Claude has now support for skills, and they have support for sub-agents, which builds on top of MCP. So there's an increasing number of ways that we can now integrate ourselves into these tools and these workflows and these agent-driven environments that allow us to do the things we need to do to make it accessible by default. So at AXCON, we showed you this picture. And this picture is how we think accessibility can be embedded into this using some of these emerging open standards to make the overall process accessible. I was really excited to see what Microsoft had done for Figma, because what it allows you to do is during the design phase, it allows you to get accessibility feedback on that. I haven't used that myself, but one of the things we do with Axe Assistant is we give it designs and we say, analyze this design from an accessibility perspective. We actually can ask Axe Assistant before we do the design, what do I need to think about as a designer in order to design an experience that's likely to be more accessible? But you can also ask Axe Assistant for advice on how to implement things. You can ask Axe Assistant for advice on how to fix things once you've found a problem with that. And so by thinking about how we can take these sorts of tools and embed them into our agent workflows, the agents can now do that. An agent you can instruct an agent through configuration and instructions to tell it when you implement a new piece of UI, ask the Axe Assistant tool for advice on how to implement that, whether as a designer or as a developer. And then by embedding the tools, the Axe platform, into these agentic workflows, we can test that. As the code gets generated, we can test. When the results come back, we can ask for advice on how to fix that. We can fix, and then we can retest. And so what happens is you get a code, test, fix, test, code workflow that allows you to have accessible by default and to do that at the speed of AI. And so what does this look like in practice? If you'll bear with me a little bit, I'm going to actually switch. So what we have here is Copilot with VS Code. Thank you, Microsoft, for developing such great open source and other products, because VS Code is really a godsend from a development perspective. And I've got it set up with some basic Copilot instructions. I've got my MCP server configuration over here, which tells it what MCP servers I wanted to talk to and how I wanted to use them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I've developed this contact us form, and I would like it's running. You can see it running down here in my console. And I'd like it to analyze that contact us form for accessibility issues. I'd like it to summarize the issues for me and then remediate any violations found. Now, for any of you who've used agents or AI in this way, you'll know that it's a little bit of a box of chocolates. You never quite know what you're going to get. You'll ask it to do something one time, and it'll do one thing, and you'll ask it to do the exact same time another time, and you'll get a slightly different thing. But what it's doing now is it's creating a set of tasks. Sometimes it says it's got 4 tasks, sometimes it doesn't. And it's analyzing at some point, it'll figure out that it needs to analyze my local. Yeah, there you go. Created 4 to-dos. Using the XMCP server to analyze the running server. I'll open this up so you can see what's happening. But basically what this is doing is it's using my organizational settings as an organization. It's taking the extension capabilities and it's running those against that local running server, and it's sending the results back. Now this is key, because what we're doing here is anything that you can do inside the Axe extension as a paying user of Axe Pro, for example, is available through MCP. And so you can go beyond what you can do just with Axe Core in terms of analysis and in terms of other functionality. Now it's got a bunch of issues, and it's summarizing for me. So there's an image that's missing an alt. It's got a label that's missing an input that's missing a label. It's got a link without a name. It's got another link without a name. And what it's going to do now is it's asking the XMCP remediate endpoint for suggestions on how to fix that. I'll just show you these because these are kind of cool. So this is the label one. And we pass in the Axe Core issue here, and the output that we get back not only provides a description of the issue, why the issue occurred, it provides also a description of the remediation from a principal perspective, right? It says, so what's going on here is that this issue occurs because there's a text input field that does not have an associated label, making it inaccessible to users who rely on screen readers or other assistive technologies. Now, this is not intended to be read by the end user, the developer. Actually, what this is doing is it's providing context back to the agent. But by providing more than just the fix, by providing all the other context and providing a fix, we give the agent the information that it needs to then, with the understanding and the context that it has of the code base that I'm using here as a developer, to then figure out how to make the appropriate fix for this particular code base. That's important because we don't, as Deque, our Axe tools, don't have access to all of this. We don't have access to sort of the policy stuff. What is your design system? How do you want to approach implementation of accessibility issues? That sort of thing. We don't have access to that. But by giving back in our remediation guidance all the context of this, we then allow the agent to apply it in an appropriate way. So what you'll see here is that we provide the text fix. We're saying make the association over here between the label and the input field. And let's see what the agent actually does. So now it's summarized all the things, and it's going to ask me at the bottom, I'll update the relevant files and rescan the paste. If you'd like me to apply these, yes, please apply the fixes. Sometimes it does it on its own. Sometimes it gives me multiple options. Last time I did this, it says option A, please, I'll do this. Option B, I'll do that. And so that's a little bit the box of chocolates that I was talking about. So now it's applying the edits and verifying. It's searching for the source code. This is something that's obviously clearly just Copilot functionality that's going on here. Now it's applying the fixes for remediation. And what you'll see is that it's now translated that remediation into the React specific code changes. So it knows that the code is React. It knows that in order to associate that label with the input field, it needs to use the HTML4 and not just the for ID stuff, which would be if you were using standard HTML. And so that's what allows us to leverage the power of the great remediation suggestion that the Axe platform is giving, and the power of the agent to achieve sort of high quality fixes that are also appropriate for the particular code base. So here you can see that being applied in the code base. You can see it's put site logo in here. Now, of course, I may not like that. I may say, okay, that's not appropriate. but I can fix that. I know exactly in the code where that is, and I can say I would like that to be the awesome recipes logo. So I can obviously apply changes to these fixes. I don't just have to accept them. And then, of course, for the social links, it's applied the ARIA label of GitHub because these are icon images. It's applying a technique over here that doesn't change the way that this looks. So it's applying, once again, intelligent application of the remediation that we provided it according to the code base that we see. So now let's see what it's done. Okay, I asked it to verify, so it says to me I reran the DevTools MCP scan against localhost contact us. After the edits, the analyzer returned no violations, and it's listed all the changes that it makes and asking me for next steps. So I think this hopefully underlines sort of the power of combining the abilities of a well-configured sort of Copilot development environment that's been set up for developing with AI together with high quality, consistent MCP tools that give you feedback on accessibility specific stuff and how they can work together to achieve great. So what you just saw is what we like to call accessibility at the speed of AI. You give your agent some instructions. The agent takes into account the tools and the configuration that you've given it and the instructions that you've given it. It then calls the appropriate tool. That tool provides back information on accessibility, whether that's implementation guidance, whether that's remediation guidance, whether that's the results of doing some testing. The AI agent uses that information to do the appropriate things. In this case, suggest code changes in the IDE, and you can decide to accept, reject, or modify those as appropriate. So if you want to get started with this today, click this. There's a QR code over here. What Wilco is going to show you later on, after we see the Salesforce presentation, is some of the advanced AI features in terms of testing that we are building into the Axe platform. And those capabilities will also be available through the MCP server. So you'll see how we're actually leveraging AI to go further with the testing than you can go with just Axe Core. And so I recommend that you stay online to see what Wilco has to say about that. But with that, I'll pass back to Jeremy in case there are any questions that have appeared in the QA or in the chat.
We very much do have many questions, but thank you guys. Thank you all to the speakers. That was awesome. We had a lot of discussion within the chat with Zhao and Hector on how this might work, but they were very excited to see some of them. But without further ado, let's get to some Q&A. So our first question is from Jonathan Hansen, and it says, a Microsoft executive recently said that he expects computers to be used exclusively by voice input and sometime in the next decade. How do you respond to that? I believe this is a question for Jenny.
I would likely take issue with the word exclusive. The world is not exclusively voice. But I think the intent here is I think we're seeing the ramifications of the improvements in AI and speech recognition. And that is having a profound implication in just ease of use. For those that have worked in accessibility for more than a hot minute, we're all smacking our heads and going, duh, we've been saying this for decades. And so I think what this is doing is giving choice. If you want to do speech in, there is a lot more activity around that, which is fantastic. And we're also seeing that not just in the app environment, but we're seeing that in the first-party accessibility environment as well, with voice access in Windows and many, many others across platforms. Speech in, speech out, definitely a lot more investment happening in those areas, and I think that's good for us all.
All right, thank you. The next one is from Todd Emco. How do you go about mitigating or dislodging the deep roots of AI original data sets from years ago that were bad for disability and diversity, and then that still have an influence of the AIs that we use today?
I can jump in a little on that. I mean, I think it's a very accurate question. I think we're living now the implications and the pain that is coming from having an inaccessible website environment. Many of the LLMs are being trained on materials that are publicly available. And as we all know, most of those are not accessible and the imagery not representative or authentic to disability. So as we're training these Harry Potter infinite capacity style libraries of data and we're training it on what is publicly available, it is very important to put the responsible AI guardrails in and to insert the right data with the right algorithms around it to make sure that we do get accurate, representative, inclusive, and accessible results. That's quite a mouthful. But I will say, if you look up the responsible AI principles, there are 6 of them from Microsoft. Every company now has them. And if you don't, you should. 2 of those principles for Microsoft are inclusive and fair. And that's what we are lingering on. And I would say, please watch my socials in the next few days because I will be sharing some of what we're doing to make sure that the right books are being referenced in our libraries for representative and authentic imagery.
All right, thank you so much. We have another question, one from Beth Quakanot. My biggest concern with using AI is that I will accidentally put confidential information out into the world. As you consider using AI, how do you all ensure information security is maintained?
Yeah,
Jenny,
Preety,
after
have
you.
you got
That's
opinions
such a
on this
great
too? I
question.
mean, I think privacy, security, and accessibility go hand in hand. I often get this question, where do you sit in Microsoft? And we sit, my peers work on all of those areas from sustainability to accessibility to security and fairness and human rights. I think we collectively lead that charge. But I would say now is the time to update your privacy settings. If you haven't before, please go and spend the time to invest in them. Make sure that you don't just do what I do sometimes, which is, oh, it's another pop-up, click. Don't do that. Read where and what you are giving your information to. Please make sure that you are giving as much as you are comfortable. And the same rules that exist in this world as I think have existed for years. Don't give your information. You just basic scam and safety rules. Please don't do that, please. It's really not the right thing to do in this world or ever. Preety, what would you say?
Yeah, no, I think what you said is absolutely right. I consider this the light triad. You've got your accessibility, privacy, and security, and all of those need to be considered very carefully. Um, I think it is a challenge, though. One challenge that I've given to Dylan is to see what we can do to make sure information for our enterprise customers who are using our AI tools, that their information is secure and we conform to their privacy requirements. So we've done a lot of work on that. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Dylan.
Yeah, it depends. What Jenny has said is absolutely true. And recently I was glad to see that LinkedIn, which is a Microsoft company, gave me the option to decide what I wanted to do with my LinkedIn posts, and so I think if companies aren't prompting you to do this, I fully agree with what Jenny said. Pay attention to this sort of stuff more and more. As a company, you can also make sure that you control to some degree where and how the information is going. I mean, Microsoft themselves on Azure give you ways to host a lot of the OpenAI models such that the data doesn't go outside of a very controlled environment. And so there are things that you can do like that. The same thing with Deque. We have the ability to host in private clouds or in on-premises situations our services such that the customer themselves has either direct control or a lot more understanding of and security or certainty about what's happening with their information. And we also endeavor to provide you with controls that are clear that you can, in your settings, that allow you to control whether or not you're using AI at all. That's an option that we have. Turn it off. I don't want to use it at all. But also, how much of your information do you want to make available to us so that we can make our AI better with that or not?
All right, Beth says thank you to all of you. Um, and then Robert had a question, but you just answered it. So one of the final questions, we have two more if we have the time to. From Chris, does the Axe MCP server run only automated tests? Assume someone would still need to carry out manual tests themselves, for example, zoom level, focus trapping, high contrast mode, etc.
So the MCP server at the moment will only do the tests that can be done in an automated fashion. I urge you to listen to Wilco's talk to see how far we're pushing that. But that's at the moment what we've enabled inside of it. We are looking at ways that we can add the other capabilities of the full Axe platform to that, including ways that you can pull in Axe Assistant and our auditor tool, which can allow you to do the additional testing that goes beyond what can be automated or semi-automated at this point in time. So ultimately, we want to allow us to be able to AI accelerate in a consistent way, in a responsible way, everything that you need to do in order to get accessibility done at your organization.
Okay, and then our final question from Eunice. Do we manually install this Git Ally extension, or is it automatically added to our Git Actions workflow?
I saw a lot of things about the links from some of what I was from anything from the training to the GitHub to the Figma extension. All the details are on those links. I saw people resolving and finding them and putting them in, so I didn't insert into the chat. So I would just in all of those questions, because Jeremy, I think there were a whole slew of them. Where's the link for the founders, for the Figma, for this? Do check them out. If you've got any questions on any of them, don't hesitate to reach out to the Disability Answer Desk and we will absolutely help there. And what I'll do in the background is make sure that all the links for these you have and you can go and explore and have fun.
All right, thank you so much. And there's one last question, either Dylan or Preety, if you wanted to answer that in text. Um, but we're going to give you a great round of applause. You guys all did wonderful. Everyone really enjoyed it. And we're going to set up Jacqueline Tolisano and Karen Herr for AI agents and accessibility. How we could help Salesforce developers write accessible code.
Hi, everyone. Jackie and I are here today to talk about how we included accessibility in our Agentforce Vibes product. We want to share our journey with Agentforce Vibes, which is an AI-assisted coding companion for developers that looks at source code and provides suggestions to eliminate or reduce friction for developers. And I want to thank Dylan for really setting up this whole stage for us, because talking about MCPs and how the AI agent works, I couldn't have asked for a better person to come before us. I'm Karen Herr. I've been with Salesforce for about 2 years. I have about 15 years with accessibility and a lot of years in the software development lifecycle. I'm the product owner for this tool. And I'm in the DC area. I've met some of you through the meetups and glad to see everyone here.
Hi, and I'm Jackie Tolisano, Senior Director of Product Accessibility here at Salesforce, and just want to thank Vitaly for giving us a plug at the beginning there. And I've been at Salesforce for just over 3.5 years, but I've been in the accessibility space since 2012, and I'm located on the East Coast as well in Massachusetts.
So I want to preface everything we say by saying that I'm not the AI expert in the room. But I didn't need to be, because our product accessibility group has partnered with our AI app development team, which is composed of software engineers, AI architects, system architects, who have worked together to make sure that we have everything we need in place. And we've thought of this from different perspectives. We're continuing to work together to add functionality, refine our existing product, add more things that we can test with AI. We're exploring vision, we're exploring, can we do functional testing? Like everything we can do to add value to the developer experience. This slide has pictures of our team and everyone that I've worked with for the past year, and I just feel such pride to be able to work with everyone here. Let me start with our persona or a user case. So I have an image of a woman at her desk with her chin on her hand, looking sad. She's sitting in front of 4 monitors, and this is Tony. Tony is slowed down by accessibility details, WCAG success criteria, test failure fixes, and accessibility production defects. Tony spends too much time fixing things that shouldn't have been broken in the first place. We want to help Tony to build things right from the beginning so that Tony can focus on creating cool products. So we got all of our people in a room and we thought, what do we need to really consider here? And one of the things is that, with great power comes great responsibility with AI, but we need to look at things like accessibility testing frameworks such as Xcore, look at rendered code. But we want to be working in the IDE, which is code that isn't rendered yet. So we're going to be looking at source code. We have precise use cases with Salesforce Lightning Design System and Lightning Web Components. So, components that aren't necessarily applicable to everybody. And we want to make sure that we tailor our advice specifically to Lightning Web Components and SLDS. Now, they are React-like components. It'll be like an HTML file and a JavaScript file and a CSS file and others, but they do have their own unique properties. Another thing we considered is that WCAG is very broad. You might not know this, but sometimes it's subjective, and we want to be able to be very precise in what we're tapering our answers to be based on Salesforce knowledge and the knowledge of our accessibility experts and the greater field. Another concern, as you know, is that not all LLMs are made the same way. Like, how can we reasonably know our answers are acceptable and that they're possible and reasonable? I mean, we've all had crazy, crazy things come back from the LLM, as Dylan said, and so we know that we need to be able to measure and quantify and be prepared. We also don't want to be tied to just one LLM. We want to be LLM agnostic, and that would give perhaps our customers flexibility to use a preferred LLM. There's a cost associated with LLMs, and we want to be able to offer choices. And as accessibility practitioners, we don't want to cause harm. Like, I don't want the tool to go in and make a component worse for someone with a disability. So, like, my objective is not to cause harm here. And then finally, we don't want to replace humans and human judgment. We know that humans have to be the ones that decide or accept or reject changes. We have an ethical responsibility to make sure that we are using our powers of discernment now more than ever in this 2025 with the LLMs and all the other things we're presented with. That's a full need that we still have that responsibility for. And what I have here is an image of a human being from the back steering a ship. It's a human at the helm, directing and guiding and making decisions. And let's talk about how we started. So when we sat down and we said, well, let's look at unrendered code and figure out which WCAG criteria apply to unrendered code. And we started breaking out its prompt, very, very refined prompts based on the WCAG criteria. So we looked at things that could be tested on unrendered code at a component level. And we went through every criteria, identified if the use case was negligible, robust, partial. And for example, name row value is a great example because it's code specific. However, criterion such as reflow, which requires visual inspection, was negligible to us at this point. A criterion such as language of page is also negligible because we're looking at components and not page level testing. We went through historical bugs. We have a rich database of historical bugs to figure out which are the most common types of bugs that are presented. And it also helps create test data for real world scenarios. We have bugs from audits, test failures, customer cases. We have a wide variety of different types of ways we receive them. We cross-reference the bugs with the severity of the bug. So based on the type of bug and the severity of the bug, where can we make the biggest impact to get things resolved quickly and improve the user experience. So we created very controlled, specific curated prompts that ensure we're focusing on the exact problem we're trying to solve without distraction, mostly by WCAG criteria, but as you know, some WCAG criteria are very, very broad. So info and relationships is going to have multiple because we want multiple use cases. Name, role, value is also another example. It's not really it lends to a very broad solution, but again, we want to be very, very prescriptive. We want our solution to not only detect, but we want to offer a refactoring in the code with appropriate accessibility fixes. And we want to create evaluation, lots and lots and lots of evaluation with test files and expected results for a bunch of different components so that we know that what we're delivering has been tested. On the next slide, I have an image of, I used AI to create images, and so that was kind of fun, but it's an LLM evaluation framework that talks about all the different LLM models, evaluation metrics, and then comprehensive reports. So how can we have a reasonable assurance that the prompts are good, that what we're doing is good? First, we have to define what good is. With an LLM, you never know. We have evaluation for each prompt, and we refactor against multiple LLMs, so probably 10 plus. And we monitor the performance of these regularly, so we know when things are dropping, when things are improving. We set measurements of what is we set measurements for what is acceptable for a beta test, what's acceptable for GA, and what's not good enough to release. And believe me, we have some things that are not good enough to release yet, but I think that we'll get there. We only release items that reach GA. Is it 100%? I'm so sorry. Perfect 100% of the time, and no, and I don't expect it to be. I also don't think us as humans are perfect 100% of the time, and that's why we still rely on testing after this process. And remember, the LLMs are a sidekick to work beside us and not to replace us and our level of discernment. And I'll turn it over to Jackie now.
Yeah, so now let's meet agent-enabled Tony. Tony uses Visual Studio to access Agentforce Vibes, which is an extension, and it detects and fixes accessibility issues in Lightning Web Components in real time and before check-in. Tony can also use the agent to run Salesforce's Sally tool, which runs on Axe Core, to render the code, validate the code against Axe Core Engine, and suggest fixes. The operative word is to suggest. We keep the human at the helm by ensuring that Tony always determines if the suggestions will be accepted or declined. So again, back to discernment. She gets to decide what she's going to accept or tweak as needed. This is where Agentforce Vibes works side by side with Tony to create a more accessible experience. Agentforce Vibes is Tony's new accessibility buddy. And Karen is going to show you a demo in a little bit. But before the demo, let's talk about why our tool is better than using an LLM directly. Any LLM can look at WCAG and other accessibility-related guidelines, but we've curated knowledge, allowing the LLM to focus on the right things. We're able to review Lightning Web Components unrendered code. We can also run Axe Core as Sally in rendered HTML and provide suggestions to fix issues. We've done extensive testing on our AI solutions and only release when evaluation data shows confidence. We are customer zero. So all of this has been packaged up in the Agentforce Vibes product. Agentforce Vibes is a Visual Studio extension that helps you to focus on solving complex problems and building smarter applications, integrations, and even agents. And this is all possible through our Salesforce Developer Model Context Protocol, or MCP server. And in the screenshot on the slide represented now, you'll notice that it's toggled to green, letting you know that it's running, which will connect you to the tools you need to review, refactor, and build code. With Vibe Cody, you'll be able to execute commands seamlessly in the chat window. The MCP does much more than accessibility, and we invite you to explore alongside us. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Karen for a couple of demonstrations.
All right, thank you. This is a recorded demo because I have the worst luck with live demos and I didn't want to be caught flat-footed today. But pretty much we ran the agent, we ran a prompt that said, please verify this component for accessibility using the MCP server. And it's going through and it's looking at the HTML file and the JavaScript file, and it's looking for accessibility defects. And as it goes through, it's showing on the screen that it'll have like an old file and a new file. And the new file, it's not really a new file, but it's like a diff. And so like highlighted areas demonstrate code that's being suggested to be changed. And then we'll show in red code that we think is bad. And then we provide output, which I really like because like Dylan said, we provide output to say we suggest these fixes for accessibility. This is what we're trying to fix. These are the criteria we're looking at. And sort of provide that grounding and training to the user so that the next time maybe they won't be making those changes as they go. And we saw a lot of things happening on the site, and it was the MCP was calling all the tools and it was directing the traffic and it was going through and calling all the things that need to happen for this process to work. And again, at the end, the developer then makes the decision to accept or to reject the changes. I have a second demo, and it's not as exciting as the first one, but I will show you. What I like about this is that we have worked in the ability to run Xcore from our agent as well. So we can go in and we can say, please run. We use Sally, which is our Salesforce framework for running the Xcore rules. So we can run the MCP asking to run our just test for Sally. It takes the component and it renders that component in a window. It runs Xcore against that component. It figures out where any errors may lie. It makes the fixes. It reruns Xcore to verify that the fixes have been made and that Xcore no longer shows errors. And then it offers it back up to the developer to accept or reject it. Now, we do use this tool internally, and internally we're able to create pull requests. So our developers are also using this tool, but we're using it in extended ways. It is still running, and it's almost over. Yep, task completed, and it's run Xcore. It's confirmed it, and no errors exist according to Xcore.
Thank you guys so much for showing us the tools that are for Salesforce development. A couple questions I had. Are these primarily for like Lightning Web Components within the Salesforce platform?
They're specifically for Lightning Web Components, and they're tailored and they're prompted specifically to look at those. So, we have certain, tags and properties and ways that the components work that aren't necessarily like standard React components. So we're able to make this a very curated experience.
Okay, and then in that regard, are they purely for like these components? Like I can't use this for Apex code or any like integrations, or like this is for like these UI components that I would create those pages with.
Right. So that's what we are telling people to use it with. We are also looking, we're sort of exploring looking at Aura, exploring looking at React, but really our use case right now is Lightning because that's our primary type of component that we have.
Okay, and then we have a question from the chat. Are the models custom from Salesforce, or we could use our own LLM models?
You could use your own LLM models. And it's, obviously you have the ones that you trust the most, and also Like you can connect directly to our MCP and choose your own model and choose your own adventure. It's like one of those 1970s, children's books. And then we sort of get into this, like you're responsible for your tokens and you're responsible for, however you want that to take place.
Okay, and then around how much percent of accessibility issues can be found by Sally?
So Sally, Sally is X core rules. So and actually we turn off a few of the rules because we're just doing component testing and a lot of times when you're just doing component testing, you don't necessarily test against global CSS or global issues. So we have a few rules turned off. So it's a little bit less than the number that X suggests, but it's what we can get at the component level.
Oh, okay, no, that's really cool. So you guys have your own custom rule set of Axe Core specifically for component testing.
We do because we found that we just weren't getting good. Why bother testing if we know that we don't have effective results because we're not testing the right things?
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And then wanted to point out that Zhao is going to take the term accessibility buddy that you used during the presentation.
We have a friend, Steve Sawson, who coined that term years ago, and he always talked about having like a bobblehead and call it the accessibility buddy. So I want to give that shout out to Steve.
And then the demos that you presented in this presentation, are you going to have this available anywhere so that those who might be able to zoom in when they're rewatching this, I think that might assist some.
Yes, I will see how we can do that and how that can be posted. I'm not sure whether it's through your site or through something Salesforce, but we'll get that together and I'll get it approved. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Oh yeah, Glenda gave a shout out to Steve. Right, so send that back to him, please. I think you'd appreciate that.
He's a legend. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for
Thank
presenting your
you.
talk. So we're going to welcome Wilco. If you don't know Wilco, he is our accessibility wizard at Deque. He's director of automation and a senior accessibility engineer. And he's going to close us out with accessibility in the role of automation.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Wilco Fiers, and let's talk a bit about accessibility and how we're looking at leveraging AI in automated testing today. I am the director of accessibility automation at Deque Systems. I've been working on Xcore for many, many years, and more recently, I've been working on advanced rules, which I'll be giving a demo on today. In addition to that, I do a number of things at the W3C. I'm the facilitator of the Accessibility Conformance Testing Task Force, and I am on the advisory board on behalf of Deque. But that's not what we're doing today. Today, what I'll be talking about is the advances in automated rules and how we're also starting to automate our guided testing tools. So the things that people would previously be doing manually, click, answer, click, answer, click, answer, how we're automating that process. And then we'll wrap up by talking a little bit about what it means to use AI responsibly in a accessibility testing context. And I'll try to leave plenty of time for questions at the end. So just to be upfront about this, there's a bunch of Deque demos coming up. But first, stop me if you've heard this. And heck, you've probably heard this while listening to this talk. AI written code is often inaccessible. These things are trained on the web, and the web is largely inaccessible. So there's problems there. And with more and more AI code being generated, as Dylan was speaking about earlier, that creates a real need to do more. Testing for accessibility with Xcore is fantastic. It's fast, it gets you things quickly, but it's not going to test for everything. And so accessibility experts may come back and find more things. And often these things get reported to you days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months later. So it takes a lot of overhead to then go back and fix those issues. You need to plan it out. You need to write LLIP and tickets. There's scheduling involved. There's a lot of extra overhead finding issues later than earlier in those processes. And often accessibility testing also just kind of gets skipped. If you're doing automated testing, fantastic, but it's also pretty easy to just overlook that. If you're doing guided testing, good on you. These tools are fantastic for that, but when it's 5 o'clock and you need to commit that code and you've got a little bit of extra testing left to do, I get it. I understand. These things get skipped. But what we're starting to do in accessibility testing is we're starting to leverage AI to be able to fill these gaps. This is a slow process. We're doing this carefully. We're trying to get this right because getting it wrong has some implications, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. But first up, let's talk about advanced rules. Advanced automated rules is a new rule set that we've been developing. These are fully automated rules, so they run alongside AxeCore. And we've come up with 5 rules of some of the most common accessibility issues that are currently need to require manual review. These include testing for headings that lack semantics, testing for missing focus indicators, multicolored texts are absolutely everywhere these days, and checking for correct use of informative and decorative images. So decorative images need to be ignored by assistive technologies. Informative images obviously have information that needs to be conveyed. And with just these 5 rules, we've managed to raise the coverage from where it currently sits at 57% of automated testing of all WCAG. Yeah, I think it's 2.0 success criteria. We've raised that up to somewhere around 65%. We have more measuring to be done there for sure, but we're working towards it. But it's a substantial boost in coverage by just looking at these most common accessibility issues. And now it's time for my demo. So let's get into that. I need to go to a different page. I here have a little demo page that I've been working on. It is terribly designed. That's my fault. Blame me for that. But it has things like terrible color contrast. It has contrast of images on a text on images. It has some graphics that are missing an accessible label. It has graphics that definitely shouldn't have an accessible label. It has a missing focus indicator on this link right here. This is a heading. And if I start my accessibility scan just like I would always, there's a couple things with these advanced rules enabled that you might notice. Firstly, we have a new advanced rules filter. This allows you to separate what you get from traditional AxeCore testing, which is available in lots and lots of places, from the advanced automated rules that we've now added. And this found 7 new accessibility issues. The first one, I'll highlight that to just prove the point, is I've got a missing focus indicator. This is impossible to demo, but I promise I just put the focus on the thing and you won't see it. So it's missing focus indicator. It's something that's been incredibly common accessibility problem. It's something that's been pretty difficult for automated testing to do. That we're now fully automatically able to detect. The second issue I've got here is a heading that's missing heading markup. If I look at the code here, that is straight up just a paragraph. It very clearly it looks like a heading, it functions like a heading, but it's a paragraph and it should absolutely have a heading markup. And what's interesting about this particular one is that we're reporting this with a 91% confidence. I'll talk a little bit more about confidence in a minute as well. But it is very confident that this is an accessibility issue, and I would most certainly agree with that. Next up, I have this terrible multicolored text detected. If you're using AxeCore, you'll only really get single color testing going on. So single color foreground, single color background. But because with advanced rules, we have access to screenshots, we're now able to test all of the pixels on the screen. And through that, we're able to do much more. The second color contrast issue is of these texts on top of these terrible images. There's this white text on top of a very noisy white-ish, bluish background image. I've got 2 of those issues for that. The next one, decorative images, is a little bit less common. just straight up a decorative image that has a text alternative. These images need to be ignored by assistive technologies. So having a text alternative prevents that and has that announced. So this is just a very noisy user experience. But a far more common accessibility problem is images that have information in them, like this bar chart here, that should not have an empty text alternative. Or at least it shouldn't have one if this information isn't somewhere else available. So we aren't just looking at the image itself, we're looking at the image in context. What this isn't doing is it's not checking for correctness of text alternatives. That is a far more complicated thing to do, and it's something that's much harder to get accurate. We haven't been able to do that to a level of satisfaction that we've wanted to put that into a product. But right now we can absolutely find missing text alternatives, and most of the time, images that need a text alternative just don't have one. It doesn't happen quite so often that humans start filling in a text alternative and then decide, no, doesn't matter, I'll just fill something random in. That's a much less common, but this catches the most common accessibility issue related to images. A little bit about confidence that I showed you on the headings rule. Because we're using AI, we know AI gets things wrong. So to be able to deal with that, we are trying to express the confidence of these results. Whenever we're not 100% sure, we will tell you in these rules. These confidence numbers are calibrated to real-world performance. So if something says 90%, we've checked against real sites that is approximately the accuracy to expect. So 90% means 9 out of 10 are going to be correct. 9 out of 10 issues. And we've also added this concept of a threshold. So you're able to control how confident do you want the rule to be before reporting an issue. The next thing I want to talk about is automated intelligent guided testing. Just real quick, if you're not familiar with guided testing, it's one of the features in the Axe extension, which takes you through a question and answer process where it asks you questions about different things on the page. And it'll, based on the answers you give, figure out whether there's accessibility problems in there. That way, if you're not an accessibility expert, you're still able to test that page for accessibility issues. What we've done for this project is we've tried to automate this process. So instead of having those questions posed to you, what will happen now is you start this IGT, it analyzes the page using AI, it attempts to come up with the answers for these questions, it'll fill those out, and then present the results to you so you can review them. We started this with the interactive elements IGT. This is one of the most common used IGTs, and we're looking to roll that out to other IGTs in the near future as well. A little bit of a demo for this too. This demo happens on a different page, and I will need to take us back to the home screen to run the IGTs. Now, if I click the IGTs button, I'm going to skip that process because what happens first is it starts to run Axe, and that'll take 20 seconds. But after it's done, it'll take you to this screen. And this is where the really interesting part happens. So first up, I select the different elements that I want to test. My tool groups these elements by different types. So it found all of these navigation elements and it grouped one. It found edit buttons on my page. There's little edit buttons on little recipe cards that are on this page. There's some social media icons and some more buttons. I will pick one of each group. Well, I'll pick 3, and this will then send these elements to our AI models, which start analyzing and posing the different questions. So this is now a fully automated process. And the kinds of things it'll do now is it'll check, is this accessible name of the element appropriate? Is the role of the element appropriate? Is the state appropriate? And for state, you can think of things like, is it disabled? Is it an expanded element? Is it a read-only element? These kinds of things. And there we go, it's already done. So it found 2 issues on 3 different elements. And if I click next, I can review the issues. I have 2 elements here that passed, and 1 of them that have 2 issues on this. And the first issue is that the name is incorrect, where the current name is edit, and AI suggestion is incorrect. It's not the most helpful suggestion, but let's understand what the AI has done here. Edit alone is insufficient because it does not specify which recipe is being edited. That makes a lot of sense to me. If there's edit buttons on this page, you'd want some kind of indicator, because there's more than one of these, what this thing is actually editing. The second accessibility issue this found is that the element does not have an interactive role, and it should have a role. So you can do this, for example, by adding a role of button to the element, or making this a native button element. Now, if I were to disagree with the result, I could go and edit and fill out a different answer, and then get me a different result. And once I'm satisfied with the results, I'll just skim over the rest. Did I think anything was odd about this? No, I don't think so. I can save. And there I have my issues. By automating this process, by filling in these questions for you and just posing them to review, we found that this testing process is a good bit faster. So it speeds up your testing, which means you get to do this more frequently. We try to make it easy to override and leave the final judgment to you, because ultimately you as humans, you as developers or as testers, are the people who know these components best and can best make these judgments. Looking ahead, I've already mentioned this, we're going to be automating more of these IGTs. We'll start with the keywords and the structure IGTs. Images comes next, and then we've got more of them. We're hoping to automate all of these because we find that these really speed up the testing process overall. We'll also look at improving the performance to lower the cost of these, because these are using AI tokens. We're hoping to make them faster. Like right now, it takes about 20 seconds to run the advanced rules. It takes a couple seconds to run one of these elements, but these need to get faster, and we want these to be more accurate so that you can use them more frequently. And really what drives this and why we've developed these features the way we've done it is because we want to get AI right. There's a lot of hype around using AI in accessibility tools, and that creates its problems. If you start reporting accessibility issues incorrectly, you end up wasting developer time. An issue that shouldn't be fixed is just a waste of time and just a waste of money. Another thing to note about accessibility and AI is going to miss things, especially if you start biasing your AI towards higher accuracy. That's something we've definitely noticed in developing these AI solutions. You can prompt them in ways to get them to be more accurate, to be more critical, and only report issues when it's relatively confident. But by doing that, it's also going to miss things. And so having humans there to check that is critical. By misreporting things, it creates a lot of confusion as well. There's a lot of noise out there about what is an accessibility requirement compared to what is an accessibility best practice. And a lot of time can be wasted in arguing these points, especially by people who aren't necessarily experts in this field. So having a structured way to do accessibility is critical. And lastly, it erodes trust in accessibility testing. If you get accessibility results wrong, especially if it isn't clear that those results are AI generated, it is going to erode trust. Developers will not want to fix things if they regularly get nonsense thrown at them. So it's really important that any accessibility AI testing tool gets this right. The way we're looking at it at DQ is kind of from four principles. Firstly, whenever there's uncertainty, you need to be clear about that. These tools need to report when AI was involved, how it made its decisions, and it needs to be made very easy for humans to check that what was reported by and what was recommended by the AI, and to correct it if it got it wrong. These aren't just features that we're building into our products. In my opinion, and in the opinion of DQ, these are minimum requirements. So if you're using our product, if you're using any other AI accessibility products, look for these kinds of things. And that is all I have for you. Are there any questions?
We
All right,
have many. We do.
Jeremy.
Yes. Okay, so I'm trying to get them all in the QA because there are also a lot in the chat, but let me just begin. So from Gretchen, will any of these AI options also work for remediating documents?
Remediating documents. I guess that depends a little bit on what kinds of documents. These tools are built in the Axe extension, which is specifically for HTML. If you're talking about HTML documents, absolutely, they'll help you find accessibility issues. These aren't remediation solutions. However, if you combine this with tools like an MCP server, which can automatically run and then suggest how to address this, you have a remediation solution as well.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I think it would be like PDF documents, but as you mentioned, like if you have a previous MCP server or something that already does that, then it could run. So by Robert, how like what is the percent of accessibility issues that could be found by the agent, arguably?
By the agent, that's not the easiest question. Just it's right now with the advanced rules enabled, we've estimated that it gets us to around 65% of all accessibility issues. That is issues in volume. So some accessibility issues are much more common than others. So that's kind of what that means. We're starting to automate the guided testing, and once we're able to do that, we think that we'll get to somewhere in the 80 percentile. But we'll have to see where that develops. It also depends a little bit on what accessibility standards you're using. DQ has been measuring against WCAG 2.0, which is a little bit dated. That is the numbers I'm using are for WCAG 2.0, but for other standards, it's probably a little bit lower. So the numbers vary a little bit on a bunch of things. Also, where you set that confidence setting changes how much you're able to find. So there's some variability in that, but it's starting to get to the 2/3 mark, and we're hoping to raise that too over
So
time.
I'm going to combine a couple of them because some of them are related to this 30%. Jonathan in the chat said maximum is around 40%. But Robert he's also like looking towards that 80% mark. So what are you guys doing that will close that gap or that will increase the confidence in these percentages?
DQ is a study out. The 57% number came from a study against a ton of WCAG audits that we've done. I think it's thousands of WCAG audits that we've done with tens of thousands of issues in it, where we've analyzed, okay, how many results did we get automatically and how many results were added manually. We're updating that study. And again, that is where the 50% number, the distinction between how many of the WCAG success criteria can you test and how many total issues can you find is different, because Karen mentioned this earlier too. Some of the success criteria have many more issues on them and are much broader. So that's kind of where that discrepancy comes from too.
And then with the advanced rules and some of these AI automated like IGTs, does that percentage change or do we see a foreseeable of this change? Like will it boost it?
It will, yes, yes. The more AI you throw at this, the more you're going to be able to test. The challenge there is getting that accurate enough that we can say, yes, you could probably trust us. AI gets things wrong, and to be able to do that in a way that it requires some fine tuning, or requires adjusting, it requires maybe prompting it multiple times. It requires multiple models working together on solutions. But overall, yes, this is going to increase the coverage. I don't think there's a realistic path for this taking humans out of the equation. I would not want that. Humans are vital to accessibility testing. What I want is for the people who do this testing to be efficient at their job. There is so much accessibility testing that is needed, and with more code being AI generated, we have more work to do, and so we need to get more efficient at this task.
Okay, we have a chat from Juliana. Our devs will run these tools manually. Could they run as part of a CI pipeline or block PRs?
Score itself can be run in that way. At this point, these tools are probably not consistent enough to be able to run inside of a CI pipeline. Because we're hitting AI models, there's some variability in the results. It isn't wild, but it is inconsistent enough that I wouldn't recommend it in a CI pipeline. It also eats up AI tokens, and that is something that we need to be conservative and careful with. We don't want to burn the planet either.
This is
So at
specifically
this point, no, I absolutely think we will get there. How long that'll take, we'll have to wait and see. But it is ultimately like these tools are enabling us to do more, and so being able to integrate them into CI pipelines is the logical step. That is on the horizon, but how far that point is, we'll have to wait and see.
All right, thank you. And then from Jason, how often is the Chrome extension updated? I see it using 4.10.3 of Axe-Core when 4.11 was released 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's in the pipeline. I'm actually that's in this sprint. I think we're launching that within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Yeah,
The extension itself is launched every 2-3 weeks, something like that.
All right, thank you for that. And then from Marshall, hey Marshall, I know who this is. What is the expected timeline for the AI integration rollout to IGTs in the DevTools extension? A broad window is enough to prepare a user group prep.
Right. So it's already available to a select number of customers. If you're interested, get in touch with your Deque representative. We can set you up. A general availability is we are hoping to launch this before the end of the year. So it's really nearby. And
So very, very soon. Okay, thank you.
yeah, we're dotting I's and crossing T's at this point.
Okay, so another one from Julia. Will the advanced AI rules be added to Axe-Core to integrate with other automated test tools like Storybook or Playwright? I have a very large team of devs that won't automatically run accessibility tests. We need to do this automatically in the CI.
Yeah, I wish that we could. The reason we've gone for a completely different rule set is because Axe-Core is built to run in lots of different environments. Whereas for these advanced rules, we need things like screenshots, we need things like Chrome protocols, we need things like network connection so that we can send things off to large language models. So it's a much more constrained ecosystem. So it's not something that can really be integrated into Axe-Core.
Okay, and
We
then a
do
couple.
want this to be in a CI environment, as I mentioned earlier. That's definitely a goal for the future. But at this point, it's not quite ready for that yet.
Makes sense. Makes sense. A couple from the chat. Um, will these new accessibility rules go into the open source Axe-Core?
I think that's more or less the same question. It's no, there's no possible way we could integrate that in Axe-Core. Axe-Core is just too constrained to be able to do the things we're doing.
And then someone asked where to find these advanced settings that specify the confidence percentage in Axe DevTools Pro.
Right. It's not yet available to the public. This will be a pro feature that we're launching pretty soon. But if you want early access, get in touch with your Deque representative. We can set you up. But we have
Okay.
customers using it already. So
And then from Hector Rodriguez, is there a description of the heading rule checking? He's looking for H1, is it mandatory or not, and also skipping level headings.
that's not part of the rule right now. What it does is it checks should this thing have a heading level. It does not check whether the heading level is correct. It's an interesting thing to add, but that's a much more nuanced thing too. So I'm not sure. That'd be a tough one to get accurate.
Okay, I think so. A lot of the we have one that literally just popped up. So from Giovanni, what do you think it would take to really accelerate progress on this AI coverage? For example, if Google exposed the accessibility tree in the DevTools MCP, would that significantly help DQ to improve the tools?
I don't think it would. The accessibility tree is already available in various ways. We know how to get to it. What it would take to get substantial more coverage is, I think, what we're planning to do is we are trying to automate these IGTs. Um, that is going to substantially increase what you can do with automated testing because the IGTs right now cover, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's 87% of all accessibility issues. And so if we're able to get there, that's a really huge gain that we get out of that.
Yeah, a lot of the questions surrounded, that accessibility coverage as well as when are these things available? And as you mentioned, they are already available. Just speak with your provider.
Yes. And
Yeah,
very soon to everybody.
very soon, very soon. So keep on your toes, right? Well, thank you, Wilco. Thank you so much. You've engaged much of these people. Glenda did want to put something out. She said it's not 87%, it is 80%, and that is for WCAG 2.0 A and AA. So put that for
Thank
the
you, Glenn.
yeah.
Yes, I was doing that number off the top of my head, and that is yes. Thank you.
And we don't want to spread
No,
misinformation.
no, it's important to me that we get this right. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So for the record, about 80%. All right. Thank you again, Wilco. Thank you for your presentation. We've all enjoyed it. So we wanted to give a thank you to our amazing speakers for their great talks, not only Wilco, but Preety and Dylan and Jacqueline and all of the other ones. We've seen certain design patterns to avoid, such as infinite scrolling. The role that AI is playing to increase digital accessibility coverage, and might also be with writing accessible documentation with AI. We've learned about how to use AI within Salesforce workflow or in our developer workflows. And we wanted to also give a thank you to our audience, right? We also thank the participation and the engaging questions that you guys have all dropped in the chat. So don't forget to register for the normal AxeCon, and the call for presenters is now open for AxeCon 2026 for February 24th and 25th. You can also join the Axe Community Discord to continue today's conversation and network with your fellow attendees. Until next time, see you in February.